Good evening and welcome to another edition of the Hoosier Tailgate here on the Hoosier.com and the On3 Network. I'm the coach, Shannon Griffith. Tonight we wrap up our four-part series of the Indiana's 2026 football schedule preview. Over the last several weeks, we've gone game by game, week by week through every opponent on Indiana's schedule, and we've looked at the non-conference slate, examine the heart of the Big Ten schedule. And tonight we finish with the three games that could ultimately define this football season for the Indiana Hoosiers. That is USC coming into Bloomington, a challenging November road trip out to Washington, and as always, the Old Oaken Bucket game against Purdue to finish the 2026 slate. And when we started this series, the focus was simple: learn about Indiana's opponents. But as we worked our way through that schedule, something has changed. Expectations have changed. This week, Indiana opened the season ranked in the preseason poll, the coaches poll, at number 6, the highest preseason ranking in school history. That's a tremendous accomplishment to what Coach Cignetti has done. And most of us would be overly joyed that Indiana was in the top 10. But as some sports casters and media personalities alike and fans across the country feels that Indiana got hosed, quite frankly. And many have felt that they should have been the defending national champion should at least ended up at number 1. I believe this is the first time in 15 years that the defending national champion has not been ranked 1 or 2 in the coaches' preseason poll. But again, what Coach Cignetti and his staff have built and what they've done in a short period of time is just honestly quite remarkable. Indiana isn't sneaking up on anyone anymore. Of course, we've known that. Every team on this schedule now sees the Hoosiers as one of the nation's top programs, and every Saturday becomes a measuring stick. Fall camp officially opened yesterday in Bloomington. Helmets were on. Competition began across the roster, and Coach Cignetti made it clear that nothing will be handed to anyone. Those who are the best at their positions will play. And championships aren't won in August, but they are built through the habits, discipline, and the attention to detail that start on the practice field. Well, tonight we'll begin with our standard Coach Griff's 5 things that matter, the August 6th edition, looking at some of the biggest stories from around college football, and including Indiana's preseason ranking, the opening camp, Stephen Daley's return, and breaking news before we came on tonight, Kellen Wyatt is making his return to Bloomington to give Indiana even more defensive edge rushers for the 2026 season. And right now, Indiana is basically 10 deep and players that either played last year or the portal players that played somewhere else. And that is quite a remarkable turn of events when it comes to that transpiring late today. It was rumored to be happening sometime earlier this afternoon, but really didn't come to full fruition until this evening, basically right up before we came on air. And I must apologize if you see me fidgeting around. I've got a bad back and got issues with my leg from some nerve damage over the years, and I get a little twitchy. So it's some think I have attention deficit disorder. So I apologize if you see me twitching a lot tonight. But again, with the opening of camp, Stephen Daley's return, and now Kellen Wyatt entering back into the picture for Indiana. Defensively right now, you've got to be very excited of this team's opportunity to continue to be an elite defense. And they were going to be potentially even without those two returning. And we'll have to wait and see what all transpires between now and any point during the year. If the NCAA were to get an emergency hearing and challenge this ruling that was handed down out in Colorado by a federal judge that gave a blanket ruling. Sometimes those are frowned upon because of the nature of them. And this is no one in particular, but I don't think the NCAA was all that too happy that this judge in Colorado spread the wealth around, I guess you could say. But for Indiana and other teams throughout the country are going to benefit from this. And then we'll spend the majority of the show tonight, after we're done with 5 things that matter, breaking down USC, Washington, and Purdue. We're going to take a look at these teams' 2025 performances, their returning personnel, who they got through the transfer portal, the coaching staffs, the matchups that can determine whether Indiana finishes the regular season playing for a Big Ten championship and a spot in the college football playoffs. It's the final installment of our schedule preview series, and by the end of tonight, you'll have a complete picture of the road that lies ahead for the 2026 Hoosiers. And as I said, looking at this Coach Griff's 5 things that matter this evening, again, just to reiterate before we came on, that Kellen Wyatt is once again back in an Indiana uniform. For how long or what the scenario is or status with him is, we'll talk about here in a little bit more as it pertains to him and Stephen Daley. But before we get started, remember to hit that subscribe and like button, hit the notification bell if you're joining us via YouTube. More importantly, you can do that. It helps us out a lot there at the Hoosier on 3 or over at the Hoosier Tailgate. Greatly appreciate that. If you got a question, put it in the box this evening. We'll try to get to it. Tim, glad to have you with us. David says, Charlie B, we have dogs all over the field. That is a correct assessment of Charlie B's quotes from today's presser availability. And if we have some time, we'll listen to some of that. And then David Johnson states that a blessed evening to all. And David, we're happy to have you here with us as well as we get started here this evening. But again, Indiana, again, was picked in the coaches preseason poll at number 6, as we throw it up here on the screen a little bit. And as you can see, Ohio State, Oregon, Georgia, Texas are the top 4, with Notre Dame rounding out the top 5. Indiana, as you can see there, had the second most first place votes at 14, but still came in at number 6. And I can hear it already echoing through the state of Indiana, rigged. But anyway, again, that's the preseason coaches poll. As we said in the past, the preseason polls, be it coaches, be it the AP, whatever it may be, is always too early. You don't have any data, and you don't know where teams are going to fall out 3 or 4 weeks into the season. And while these are nice to have discussion about and argue about around the water cooler in the office, or pump your chest out a little bit further now that Indiana has appeared in the top 10 in a preseason poll, that's all they're good for. As we go through the season, they become more and more relevant to the college football playoffs and the potential for a team like Indiana to get a chance to repeat as national champions. But I don't think you can look at that top 20 or the top 10 there and have too much argument with it. When it comes to Ohio State, some may say Oregon. I think that's because Dante Moore's returning and others they're going to have back. Same thing with Ohio State. You got Julian Saying returning, excuse me. and some other top-notch players coming back. Jeremiah Smith, you could go right down the list there. And then, of course, Georgia, Texas, and Notre Dame all are going to have returning quarterbacks in their starting lineup, and that has a lot to do where they're placed as we, kind of move ahead with all this. But Indiana coming in at number 6, of course, Miami there after them, Texas A&M, Oklahoma, and Mississippi. And if you look down through that, I think we're seeing teams like Michigan, Penn State, Washington, Iowa at 22, which I thought was a little low for them. Southern Cal's at 14. And again, a pretty good representation from the Big Ten, especially from that middle of the pack that everybody was so concerned about, discussing how the Big Ten's middle of the pack wasn't all that strong. Well, I think that's a false narrative looking at the preseason coaches poll, being that it's probably pretty darn strong as we look at this year thus far. And before we head on there, I don't think there's any question, Tim, that many felt that IU would be higher than Texas and Georgia. But again, I think a lot of that has to be the fact that you've got Manning returning for Texas, Gunnar Stockton returning for Georgia, I believe. And those two are proven quarterbacks and commodities. And then the fact that they've got some others in their lineups that are going to be pretty good as well. But the ironic thing, as you had said there, the number of first place votes that Indiana got, getting 14 of them, was kind of a head scratcher as well. But again, those are kind of is what it is type of polls at this point in time. And again, I think the fact that Indiana's in the top 10, the fact that there's many Big Ten teams represented in the top 25 bodes well for the conference as well as the SEC, as we can see across the top 25, represented across the board. But again, very early in the process for that discussion. We talked about this earlier. Stephen Daley returns, as now does Kellen Wyatt, right before we came on the air this evening, as the 5-for-5 rule that was not going to be in effect for the 2022 recruiting class until a judge granted a blanket injunction that allowed all student athletes define where they're at in that process. And for Stephen Daley and Wyatt, it benefited them. But this injunctions all started with basketball players in Hamilton County, Ohio, where there were a numerous number of basketball players that had filed this injunction. And when you looked at it from a rational perspective, based upon when that ruling was given, including the ruling out in Colorado, everyone understood that you could see where the winter sports and spring sport athletes were going to benefit from this injunction. And it was going to be very hard for the fall sports getting ready to start to pick up anybody in that matter, because the season has started, the rosters were in a lot of respects full, and guys hadn't been working out with the team. But in this case with Stephen, and I'm assuming with Wyatt, both coming off of season-ending injuries last year, and the fact that both of these guys did not sign any type of let me retract that. Both of these guys not signing with an agent for pro representation gives them the opportunity to come back and participate this year and improve their status potentially for the NFL draft after having suffered both of them devastating injuries last year, Daley especially after the Big Ten championship game. So it does benefit those two young men, because it also A, gives Indiana some returning firepower, and B, it gives those kids an opportunity to put more tape on, tape of their play out there for NFL scouts and such to potentially put themselves in the draft this coming spring. So for a guy like Daley, who is a freakish of an athlete, he had been working out anyway with the mindset that he was going to enter the draft in 27. So he's coming in in pretty good shape. I don't know where Wyatt stands in that respect. I know that Wyatt, being that he was late today, being elevated to a yes status, probably had more to do with being cleared than anything. And that kind of answers your question there, David, about Wyatt's status of being healthy. I'm assuming that with him. I have not seen any other reports that are contrary to that at this point, but that is, always a concern. What the NFL values more than a young, talented player ready to go out of the box player that they can plug and play. No question. I mean, if they can find a guy that can come in after being very successful and in the collegiate ranks and step right on the field and be a contributing factor in their depth, more power to them. And that's where somebody like a Stephen Daley potentially does that. And he wasn't going to get any opportunities this year because of the injury that he had. And Wyatt, I don't necessarily think will, find a home from a professional standpoint. But again, a year more to mature and things of that nature, as well as I do, that gives them a great opportunity to come back. And I don't think, and I said this morning as I was sitting in for Jim Coyle on Indiana Sports Beat Radio, I don't think Indiana is going to be in a big hurry with Stephen, or in this case, Kellen now, to have them ready to go come week 1 against North Texas. I think they're going to have an idea to have them ready to go by the time they play against Northwestern or Western Kentucky, because they do not want to rush them. They already know what they can do. There's some evaluation that still needs to take place with some of the new guys and young guys, like Javarius Hall, who was potentially going to see an opportunity for himself. Now, whether that still happens or not, we'll see. And others that could be impacted by this. And that's the negative part of this. You got 2 guys that were out the door that now have come back into the fold and could jeopardize some playing time potentially for some young guys that were moving up. And Duquay, who was a big factor for Indiana as the year went on against Oregon and in the national championship game, does he now see his playing time decrease? Does that lead to potential them becoming a little disgruntled and looking for the nearest exit after the season's over? Those are all things that I think have to go through a coach's mind on how it may or may not upset the apple cart, but we'll see. As we look ahead with that and going to the next thing here, we'll look real quick is, excuse me, excuse me here. Day 2 is up and running today. There's some observations there on the Hoosier.com. Get over there, take advantage of the 75% off opportunity to get in at a 75% discount on a yearly subscription. Comes out to about $2.49 a month. But there's observations from day 2, a ton of coverage there. Of course, the breaking news with Kalen Wyatt and the pressers of the last 2 days that Sig did yesterday, and then Charlie B and Hardy did today. So camp is rocking and rolling, and they're in what we call an acclimatization period where they have to build up to the point where they get to start putting on shells and helmets. Right now, they're just in helmets and T-shirts and shorts, and then eventually they'll work into about the 5th or 6th day into full pads. But again, we know Sig is not overly concerned with that aspect of things, being that he's process oriented. He's about get in, get out, and he doesn't hit much anyway during camp because he wants guys to be fresh and he doesn't want to get anybody dinged up. So, not sure that is over a big concern for Indiana when it comes to that. Also, this week, IU and Notre Dame canceled, and we know that Notre Dame was able to rekindle their rivalry game with USC, and that led to this being a win-win for both schools. I do think it was going to be canceled anyway, but I have no proof or any other one's take of that being the case. And, I've said this too before that today, especially, when Sig came to Indiana, I understood the scheduling aspect of things where you're playing 2G6s in an FCS school. Completely understood that. And I don't think there's any coach in America that would say coming into Indiana, that wasn't the right way to go. But the fact that Indiana is lost one ball game, undefeated at home, a national championship now, as well as a Big Ten championship, I do think their philosophy needs to change a little bit there and get themselves into a game with a P4 school like they did with Virginia or Louisville, or, Indiana had a huge rivalry with with Kentucky of the SEC. All those things need to be fully evaluated because I don't think a non-conference schedule like Indiana has now is ultimately going to help them if there are one or two loss team and they're getting compared against other like teams that maybe have a stronger non-conference slate than Indiana does and identical conference records that could ultimately hurt them. So again, it's kind of the good and the bad. And I know Sig says this is the way that he prefers it. I think he's even gotten written in his contract how this is supposed to go in terms of right of a refusal, I guess. And therefore, this helps Indiana as well as Notre Dame as they get to have USC back in the fold as a rivalry game for them. And that has a lot of tradition in it as well, but disappointing for Indiana fans that they don't get a home and home series with Notre Dame in 2030-31. So again, think there's some evaluation that needs to happen there. Looking at some other stories, I don't know if anybody saw this, that Disney Plus is adding more college football streaming games to their slate. They had already had College Game Day on their platform, which is kind of works with Hulu. And of course, ESPN's a big part of that family. But now it looks like there's going to be more streaming games available through Disney Plus heading into this year and beyond, as we see more and more teams choosing to put games behind a paywall, not only in college, but as well as the NFL and other major league sports. So that is plus on the docket as well. And then if you didn't see this one, Akron football has a new contest appearing this year. And I don't know what that contest entails, but Akron has struggled of late, especially with ticket sales and game day attendance and such, that this year, if a fan enters this contest and would win, they get to be involved scripting the opening set of plays, which usually amounts to between 10 and 12, in some cases 20, 25, depending on who you are. I normally did the first 10. And that fan will get an opportunity to sit with Coach Moorhead and discuss that script and come up with a plan for their first home game of the season this year. So pretty interesting feat there. I think it's pretty cool with all that. So that's going to be a cool for that fan as well as those people at Akron. I don't know if Sig would do that. That may be a question that we'd have to ask him and propose to him, but I highly doubt that would occur. But that is kind of a cool thing that I saw. Tim says here, Coach, I agree. Very disappointed that they dropped Virginia, Louisville, and now ND. I know you said that could hurt them down the road, and it may, and it may not. It's just my opinion that it could, just because of some things that we've seen of late, but we'll wait and see with that. As for the coaches on a hot seat this season, there's 6 of them that are notable. And I think it's one of those things that you look at USC and Coach Riley, Lincoln Riley, he's number 1 on this list as being one as a coach on the hot seat. Shane Beamer at South Carolina, Mike Norvell at Florida State, Luke Fickell at Wisconsin, and Mike Loxley at Maryland, and Dave Arnetta at Baylor. So those 6 enter the season with a win or else proposition, and we'll have to wait and see how that all plays out. But again, tough way to go into the season knowing that you're sitting on the hot seat as you head into this year at both institutions. So when we come back, we're going to start our breakdown of USC Trojans and get a take on Lincoln Riley and where he's at, because he's number 1 on the list. Don't leave. Stay right there. We'll be back with more Hoosier Tailgate after these messages.
If you're serious about following Indiana athletics, there has never been a better time to become a premium member of the Hoosier.com. Right now, new members can save 75% off their first year, paying just $2.49 per month. That's only $30 for an entire year of premium coverage. Your membership gives you unlimited access to the Hoosier.com, powered by the industry's best team at On3, along with the Rivals Recruiting Network and a subscription to The Athletic, giving you unmatched coverage of Indiana athletics and college sports. As a premium member, you'll receive breaking Indiana football and basketball news, in-depth analysis, elite recruiting coverage, transfer portal updates, exclusive insider information, access to one of the nation's best message board communities, a complete player database, and the exclusive On3 app that puts all of the Hoosiers' content, alerts, and discussions right at your fingertips. Whether you're following Curt Cignetti in Indiana football, Indiana basketball, recruiting, NIL, or the transfer portal, the Hoosier is your home for the most complete Indiana coverage available. But don't wait. This special offer expires Tuesday, August 12th at 11:59 p.m. Central Time. Join today for just $2.49 per month. Lock in a full year of premium coverage for only $30 and become part of Indiana's premier fan community at thehoosier.com.
Indiana football fans, get your officially licensed Indiana gear today at the Hoosier Tailgate Fanatics storefront. Jerseys, hoodies, hats, collectibles, tailgate gear, and championship apparel, all in one place. Look for the link in the description to the Hoosier Tailgate storefront and gear up today.
Welcome back to Hoosier Tailgate here tonight. And I'm not ready for the boilers, of course, as we get set and ready to go, but bring in the USC Trojans as we get going here this evening, as that will be the next game on the docket for Indiana, coming off a 3-week stretch, or I should say 4-week, because they have a bye in there. They have October 17th home against Ohio State. Big game there. Then they travel to the Big House at Michigan. The next week after, they do get a bye week after the Michigan game before they entertain Minnesota. And after Minnesota comes to town, the USC Trojans and Lincoln Riley come to town as well. And these games, as you can see in that middle stretch there, are going to be some tough ball games when you think 3 out of those 4 games against top ranked teams. And never count out Minnesota, especially where they're stuck on Indiana's schedule. The most positive thing there is that they're at home against the Gophers, but PJ Fleck has always found ways to upset a top tier program in the Big Ten, and you never want to, overrule the fact that that is very possible in the Big Ten, and especially Indiana coming off two what I will call very emotional type of ball games, where they're going to be riding high for 2 straight weeks. So got to keep an eye on that. But the Trojans come in, and a couple of websites I want you guys to be aware of, and I found these 2 very interesting. puntandrally.com is a great website that will give you a lot of insight, some analytics and things of that nature. And then the other one is CFBupdate.com. So college football update, but just CFBupdate.com. That gives you a look at depth charts and stats as well, and roster of all these teams, as well as a active scoreboard when the season starts. I have found those 2 sites very useful in observation and getting notes and things of that nature. But when you look at this USC team coming back, they've got Mavia coming back. Jaden Mavia completed 66% of his passes, threw for 3,700 yards. When you look at some of the run game and such of that nature, you've got some guys returning there. Wayman Jordan, kid, rushed for 570 some odd yards, 6.5 yards a carry. Some big guys on the outside as well when you look at it. McCree, the tight end, good player himself. And these are guys that are very productive in all aspects of USC's talented returning offense. They have rated their team talent ranked 13th overall, offensively talent number 22 overall, defense being a strong suit for them at 11th overall, productivity returning offensively about 64% of their production is back, but that comes in at a 64th rating, defensively 67%, and I'm sorry, let me backtrack there. Offensive returning productions at 67%. Defense is at 62%. So I apologize there. Their transfer portal class came in at 26 this year. And again, 19% of their 2026 roster from the portal. So they picked up a lot there as well. Strength of schedule is a ranked 14th overall. 9-4 last year. Vegas win total, they have them set at about 8.5, 9 games. So again, about where they finished last year, but I don't think that's good enough for the people out in USC, because I think it's got to be better than that and potentially getting into the college football playoffs. But a returning starting quarterback, defensively, some key guys back. The Shelby kid, really good. He had 5 sacks last year. Let's see. Abrish, he had 4. And Fisher, who transferred in, is 2. So they've got some guys on the defensive front that can get it done in terms of quarterback pressures. But when you look at overall where they stood last year, scoring defense, 23.1, total defense, they're giving up 360, I'll call it 1 yards per game. And teams had a pretty good success on their third down conversions at about 36%, but red zone defense was not bad, not great at 71%. So overall, you can see where USC kind of right there in the middle in terms of average in some respects. Their red zone offense was their best part of their offense a year ago, almost 90% in the red zone. Third down offense, not bad at 43%. And, they put some yardage up, 454 yards and 31 points. And again, though, a lot of that, they are a big play type of team. So that's what you've got to worry about when you play a team like USC and all of this, is that they're a team that lives on the big play, and they can throw it up with the best of them. And if you go to those websites, you can kind of see some of their distribution of their talent and how it ranks in success and things of that nature. So a team that's coming back, big play potential, an offense that puts some points and yardage up on the board. Can they continue to do that and elevate? And can their defense get even better than they were a year ago? That's all to be determined. And their schedule that USC has is pretty interesting. They start out with San Jose State, Fresno State. Then they have the Ragin' Cajuns of Louisiana coming in. And then they go to Rutgers. So their fourth game of the year is their first road trip before taking on, well, let me take that back. Let's make sure I'm on the right year here after all. And let's see here. I do believe, yeah, that is correct. I wanted to make sure I had the right year up. And then Oregon after that, and Washington State and Penn State. So again, kind of like Indiana, 3 big time programs right there to punch you in the nose. And it doesn't get any easier after Penn State. They go Wisconsin, who I do think will be better, and Ohio State. Now they get a bye before coming to Bloomington to take on Indiana, which is huge. They would have 2 weeks to prepare for Indiana. And then after Indiana, they finish up with Maryland and, of course, USC. So, they're going to face, 3 of the top offenses in the country last year, 3 of the top defenses in the country last year, and overall power rating, 3 of the top from last year, that being Ohio State, Indiana, and Oregon. So again, that middle schedule for them is going to be a tough one. And yeah, I would agree too that they've always had an offense that has always been high production, which is not uncommon for Lincoln. And remember him coming out of Oklahoma there, that was kind of a conference where defense was optional in some respects. And right now, I think their defense has got some dudes, or dogs, as Charlie Becker would say, that they can improve themselves from last year. And the question for me or anyone else looking at their schedule is, how do they come out of that Oregon, Washington, at Penn State? Those are 3 dandies of a game. Now, 2 of those 3 are at home. So they get Oregon at home and Washington at home. And they go back-to-back weeks on the road. Penn State, interesting enough, they've got an open date after Penn State before they play Wisconsin and Ohio State. And that Ohio State game is out in LA. Then another bye week before they finish up with 2 out of the last 3 on the road. So again, USC is a team that who knows where they will be at the time that they come into Bloomington, but they could be a team just as much as Indiana could be a team there needing a win or 2 to help bolster their profile to get into the college football playoff. So that's kind of a wait to be seen type of scenario when it comes to USC coming into Bloomington this year. The big trip out west, again, to Washington, the Seattle area. Again, remember, Washington came into Bloomington a couple years ago after playing, or Indiana played Nebraska, and they had a big output of game there. This game, another big output, this time by D'Angelo Pons, intercepting that screen pass and taking it back for a pick six, in the famous words of "roll out the big red carpet" in that game from the broadcasters with the Big Ten Network. This year's team that Indiana will face is going to have some talent in their offense, as they've got the Williams kid back, the young man that had gone into the portal, came out of the portal. You know, you kind of were playing, what is he going to do? What's he not going to do type of deal. And, you know, fortunately enough, he was being kind of prodded by outside influences to get into the portal, that they would get him $2 million if he did. But again, they got him to return. And we saw a little bit of him when they were here a couple seasons ago. And you could see the difference that it made offensively for him, because he is a dual threat type of quarterback. He throws a nice ball. He can move in the pocket well, and they can do a lot of things with him. Now they lose their talented running back from a year ago, and that being, let's see here. I'm trying to think of that running back, Coleman. He's gone, but they do have a transfer coming in, Lamar, or a kid by the name of Jaden Lamar. And then they got Washington and Moon coming back. On the outside, they've got a good transfer from Christian Moss, as they lost some guys there on the outside, but they got Roebuck back, who had 560 yards in receptions, and DeGraff coming back, who had 360 yards in receptions. And then when you flip it over to the defense, again, they've got a pretty good crew coming back there, and a defense that was in that top 10 nationally with a lot of things, as you see there, and kind of in where they ended up with their Team O and Team D in the top 10. So this is a Washington team that I do think is going to be a team to keep an eye on. Not much is being said about them, and they picked up some nice transfers. A kid out of Ball State, Christian Moss, the wide receiver from Kennesaw State. Let's see there. DB out of Virginia. I think he's a pretty good one, but I do think they got a good front six in their defense. I do think that from a talent standpoint, they are going to be stronger this year. I think in overall team production, they have about 71%. Offensive returning production, 83%. So 83% of their offensive production is back. Now, they do lose some productivity out of their defense, as only 61% is back there. And that's where some of the portal transfers come in. But their portal class was ranked 47th overall last year in that respect. So again, Jed Fish has a team that I do think is very capable of having a Indiana type of year. Not much being talked about them in terms of where they stack up in the Big Ten. You know, they're 3 years removed from playing in the national championship game. Coach Fish has come in, and, you know, he basically had to turn things over after Kellen left to go to Alabama. And he's done a pretty darn good job there, as he did at Arizona. And, you know, this is a team to keep your eyes on, because they are definitely capable with this offense coming back. And that and the Williams kid of a team that could get hot and have that feeling of, that they can't be beat, especially if they can get some semblance of the defense they had a year ago. And that will all be important with that. But we're going to have to see when it all comes to it. It's going to be a tough game out in Washington for this Indiana team. It's a tough environment to go play in. But again, don't overly think about these type of games, because Sig has been one of those coaches. Again, he believes in a blueprint. He's process oriented. This is nothing but a business trip going out to Washington. And just like going to Penn State last year, he didn't care that Indiana had not had much success out there, as he put it. That Penn State team had not seen this version of Indiana either. And same thing will be the case to a degree about Indiana heading to Washington, and a lot being made of the environment that they will go into out there in Seattle. And it's a loud environment. You could run into bad weather out there as well. I don't know if there's been a time put on that yet. I don't think so. And that's a game that you could very well see played at night. Doubt it, especially if Indiana's rolling and Washington's rolling as well. That could be one of those games you get big noon kickoff or CBS for sure. But keep an eye on this Washington team. They're a team that I think is going to surprise a lot of people this year and put themselves in a great position to have success and ultimately get themselves where they can rattle some feathers. Now, they start with Washington State, which is their rivalry game, I guess you could say, their Apple Cup game. That's game one. Then they play Utah State and Eastern Washington, all three of those at home. Then they go on the road to Minnesota. Then they have Minnesota, USC, Iowa, the next three in a row. So back-to-back at USC. They get Iowa at home. So that's a benefit in their case there. And then they head to Purdue. They get a bye week before they head to Nebraska. They go Nebraska, Penn State, Michigan State, and finish up with Indiana and Oregon. So nobody in the Big Ten is immune from some big stretches of games, as many people would think that the Big Ten's middle is not that good. I disagree. I think it's going to be very strong this year, and a lot of opportunity is going to be there for a lot of teams, especially those in that you would say is in that second tier, Washington being one of them. I keep an eye on these guys right now. Their prediction, Vegas has them at 7.5. Most are saying 8-4. Their strength of schedule is number 29 overall. So again, a pretty decent looking ball club when you think about it. And we'll just have to wait and see what all transpires with this. But again, two big games back to back for Indiana. And before they take on the Purdue Boilermakers in the ultimate game of the year coming here in a moment. Going to step aside. I got to step up and stretch to keep my back and things all straight. Get a sip of water. You do the same. Don't go anywhere. When we come back, we're going to talk about the Purdue Boilermakers as Indiana will finish up the 2026 season at home with the Old Oaken Bucket. Back with more Hoosier Tailgate right after this.
If you're serious about following Indiana athletics, there has never been a better time to become a premium member of the Hoosier.com. Right now, new members can save 75% off their first year, paying just $2.49 per month. That's only $30 for an entire year of premium coverage. Your membership gives you unlimited access to the Hoosier.com, powered by the industry's best team at On3, along with the Rivals Recruiting Network and a subscription to The Athletic, giving you unmatched coverage of Indiana athletics and college sports. As a premium member, you'll receive breaking Indiana football and basketball news, in-depth analysis, elite recruiting coverage, transfer portal updates, exclusive insider information, access to one of the nation's best message board communities, a complete player database, and the exclusive On3 app that puts all of the Hoosiers content, alerts, and discussions right at your fingertips. Whether you're following Curt Cignetti in Indiana football, Indiana basketball, recruiting, NIL, or the transfer portal, the Hoosier is your home for the most complete Indiana coverage available. But don't wait. This special offer expires Tuesday, August 12th at 11:59 p.m. Central Time. Join today for just $2.49 per month. Lock in a full year of premium coverage for only $30 and become part of Indiana's premier fan community at thehoosier.com.
Indiana football fans, get your officially licensed Indiana gear today at the Hoosier Tailgate Fanatics storefront. Jerseys, hoodies, hats, collectibles, tailgate gear, and championship apparel, all in one place. Look for the link in the description to the Hoosier Tailgate storefront and gear up today.
Welcome back here. Whoop, let's make sure we get everything going. Back here to Indiana Tailgate, as well as the Hoosier Tailgate, as I'm trying to get my Purdue link up there. Sorry about that. Kind of got flustered there with everything. But appreciate you all joining us here this evening. Again, we'll be heading into a 2-time-a-week here in a couple of weeks as we get ourselves prepared for the 2026 season. And kicking off against North Texas, Taven Jackson comes to town as the quarterback of record right now to be the starter. So again, interesting dynamic there as Indiana looks to start the year off. Barry Odom and the Purdue Boilermakers come to Indiana, finish up the 2026 season. Again, second season for Coach Odom, and had some interesting hires in the offseason. He hired a defensive coordinator, Kevin Kane, kind of a rehire to a degree because he had been there under Coach Waters before Odom took the job. And, they went a year last year that saw Purdue finish, I believe, at 2-10 overall, 0-9 in the Big Ten. Again, this year, I don't think there's, a great track record for them to be better than 3-9, 4-8, as most of the experts are predicting right now. But this is a ball club that has seen some major rebuilding done, especially through the portal. Quarterback Brown is back from last season. Again, he's a guy that threw for 2,200 yards on the year, completed about 70% of his passes. His problem has been he seems to make the critical mistake at the wrong time, where he's had some chances to put the ball in the end zone, but it went the other way for a pick six and a touchdown. And he had some ball security problems as well. But again, that's going to be the key thing there. He's got 2 years under his belt. If he can get himself to a point where he's not giving the ball to the other team, then offensively, I think they could, put some things on the board for them because, pretty good offensive backfield, wide receiver room, decent, got some good looking offensive linemen this year. And overall, when you think of Purdue, they went out and they did go out and get themselves some transfers from the portal. I'm trying to pick up some of that right now, but let's see how many they got from the last year. And I can't get that up right at the moment. But again, this team is, again, still in a rebuild. They hired their new AD today. McClendon, I believe is his name, come from Rice, has a good background in raising money, which is going to be important for Purdue on all fronts, not just football. But again, this is a team that, loses their leading rusher in Maccabee, but he ended up getting dinged up last year. And Harris, the kid, is back. He had about 305 yards last year as well on the ground. And then when you look at their productivity back, it's really interesting. Overall productivity for the entire team, 66%. Their returning production on offense, 66, as well as defense returning productivity, 66%. So overall, very interesting there in their productivity that's coming back. Talent-wise, they gave them a team rating, talent-wise, of 74, which is about 64th overall. Their portal class, though, was, I believe, a top 25 in the portal class, getting 29 commitments out of it. 54% of the roster is hailing from the portal, and this will be a huge game for Indiana. Again, heading into the final week of the season, hopefully, like last year, a chance to cap off a great year and put themselves into the Big Ten championship game and get themselves in a situation where they are heading back to that and also heading into the college football playoffs. But that will all be a to be determined. And I do think that Indiana is going to have a big season on tap because of who they got playing. Jason says, he has a funny quote. Well, when you put it up there, I will be glad to share it, Jason. Hopefully it's not something that I said stupid wise, but we'll see there. But again, looking back at this schedule for Indiana, I do think that toughest stretch of the schedule is when they play Ohio State, Michigan before they have a bye against Minnesota, but that's backed up with a game versus USC and Washington. They're at the middle to latter part of the season. I do think that looking ahead to where a potential swing game that could ultimately define the season, boy, I don't think you can look much further than Ohio State. While that may not determine one way or the other, whether they go into that game undefeated and happen to get tripped up. But you got to be concerned, too, about a trip to Nebraska, because that is also a very hostile environment to go in and play. And Indiana will go to Nebraska, and they will head to Washington this year. And again, a defense that's coming back with a lot of productivity, returning, picking up Daley and Wyatt just to add some icing on top of the cake. We're going to see how well Josh Hoover responds in this offense. Does he do a similar thing that Fernando and Curtis Rourke have done? You got a wide receiver room that is deeply talented, a running back room as talented as they have been. Well, you got Martin, you got Turbo, BB Jr.'s back and looking good. An offensive line, a little light on their depth. However, I do like who they got. And then when you look at defense, you got Isaiah coming back, you got Hardy coming back. We can go through the defensive line, but let's just say they got a ton of guys coming back. And in the secondary, they may be, as a collective group, better this year than they were last year. So all the things running in the same line for Indiana when it comes to that. And again, can Indiana win the big games in November? Because that's where championships are won. And there's no question that Indiana, over the last 2 seasons, have had a ton of success at the right time. They got an undefeated home schedule on their way. And again, that they're going to be able to put themselves in a great position with everything. Let's see. I see some guys here before I wrap it up. If you don't want to win championships, then go to IU. He did not say that, right? I hope he did not say that. And I think that is exactly what he said, according to other guys, because it says that he stepped in a bison chip today. And that's not a very good showing for a guy that just came on the into the Big Ten and not knowing that Indiana won a national championship. And I'm sure he's saying a little bit tongue in cheek, but man, oh man, that's not a great way to start your presser. Best thing to do there is, like Lee Corso says, when you win, say little, and when you lose, say nothing, right? That'd be one thing that I would advise him on. It's time to say nothing until they start winning. But again, Indiana has the team, they have the personnel to have as good a year as they've had in the last two. It's just a matter, can the ball continue to bounce favorably to Indiana, where they continue to do the right things? A tough as nails defense, an offense that's opportunistic, a offense and defense that play complementary football and win turnover battles and things of that magnitude, touchdowns instead of field goals inside the red zone. If they can do all that, they're going to have a very, very good chance to come out of this year in a position as they did last year, with an opportunity to go back to the college football playoffs as well, maybe get an opportunity to defend their Big Ten championship. But we'll wait to see. But there's going to be a lot of things that is going to happen along the way. When you look at it, we'll get some position battles started next week and what to look for there. And you can expect that, as well as getting some of the guys from the Hoosier.com in here to talk about where they feel this Indiana team is going to finish overall this year. I don't like to get into predictions when it comes to that, because I think each and every week is a event of its own. But maybe I will step out on a limb when the timing's right to make that prediction. But again, we will have you prepared for everything as you can be for this 2026 season that's on the cusp here for the Indiana Hoosiers. Well, that's going to wrap up our 4-part series on the 2026 schedule preview. We've broken down about every opponent on Indiana's schedule the best that I can. Starting next week, the conversation changes as we take our focus to the preseason camp, position battles, depth chart movement, recruiting, everything that will lead up to kickoff against North Texas here on September the 5th. And football season has arrived, and excited to cover it every step of the way with you, as we are hopefully your number one source for all things Indiana football. Thanks for spending part of your evening with me this morning. For everyone at thehoosier.com, as well as on 3, I'm the coach, Shannon Griffith. And until we see you again next week, Thursday night, have a great weekend. And remember, this is the Hoosier Football Tailgate, all on thehoosier.com. Good night, everybody.